I'm standing in the driveway of my inherited $1 million Victorian house, watching my parents desperately bang on the mahogany front door, their voices cracking as they beg me to let them inside. The irony burns through my chest like acid. These are the same two people who threw me out at 18, calling me too weak and worthless to deserve a roof over my head. Now they're here because they lost their own home to foreclosure, and they need the son they abandoned. My father Harold pounds harder his fists, leaving marks on the wood, while my mother Patricia cups her hands against the glass, peering inside at the luxury they never thought I'd achieve. The memory of that devastating 18th birthday still cuts through me like broken glass whenever I think about it. I was Berkeley Johnson, a skinny kid who'd always struggled with physical tasks, and my parents, Harold and Patricia, had decided that made me a complete failure as a human being. They didn't just kick me out that day. They orchestrated something far more cruel and calculated. Harold had spent the morning moving concrete blocks into our backyard, each one weighing about 60 pounds. He told our neighbors, the Andersons, the Garcias, and Mrs. Kellerman, that they were about to witness a character test for their son. "We're going to see if Berkeley has what it takes to be a real man," Harold announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Time to separate the wheat from the chaff in this family." Patricia stood on our back porch, wearing her floral sundress arms, crossed, nodding approvingly at her husband's performance. She'd invited additional neighbors over, claiming there was going to be something educational happening in their yard. I knew something felt wrong, but at 18, I still trusted my parents enough to believe they had good intentions. Harold handed me work gloves and pointed at the concrete blocks. "Move these from this corner to that corner," he commanded, gesturing across about 20 feet of grass. "Real men can handle manual labor. Let's see what you're made of." The first block felt incredibly heavy as I bent down to lift it. My chest immediately started feeling tight, and my heart began racing in an irregular pattern I'd never experienced before. But with all those neighbors watching, and my father's expectant glare burning into me, I gritted my teeth and hoisted the block up. Sharp pain shot through my chest as I stumbled forward 3 steps before my legs gave out completely. The concrete block crashed down onto the grass as I collapsed, gasping for air and clutching my chest. My heart felt like it was beating out of rhythm-skipping beats, and then hammering too fast. "Pathetic," Harold announced to the gathered crowd. "Absolutely pathetic. Look at him, folks. 18 years old and can't even move one simple block without falling apart." Patricia stepped down from the porch, shaking her head dramatically. "We've tried everything with this boy. Special diets, vitamins, encouragement. Nothing works. He's just genetically weak." Mrs. Anderson looked uncomfortable. "Maybe he's just having an off day." "No," Harold said firmly. "This is who he is. A burden. We can't keep supporting dead weight in this household." I was still on my knees trying to catch my breath when Patricia walked over and stood above me. "Berkeley, you're 18 now. Old enough to face reality. You're too weak to contribute to society, too weak to help this family, and frankly, too weak to live under our roof anymore." The neighbors began murmuring among themselves. Some looked shocked. Others seemed embarrassed to be witnessing this public humiliation. But my parents pressed on with their performance. "We're cutting the dead weight from this family," Harold declared. "Effective immediately. You have 30 minutes to pack whatever fits in one suitcase, and then you're out." I staggered to my feet, my chest still aching, and my heart still racing irregularly. "Dad, I don't understand. I can try again. Maybe if I rest for a minute." 30 minutes, Patricia interrupted coldly. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." My younger sister Emma stood in the kitchen window, her face pale and her eyes wide with terror. She was only 16, still dependent on our parents, and I could see she wanted to help, but was too frightened to intervene. When our eyes met, she mouthed, "I'm sorry," before disappearing from view. I stumbled inside and threw clothes, a few books, and basic necessities into my high school graduation suitcase. My hands shook as I packed, partly from whatever had happened to my heart, and partly from the shock of being discarded like garbage. When I emerged 28 minutes later, Harold and Patricia were standing by the front door with their arms crossed. Harold held up his hand. "Before you go, we want to make something crystal clear to everyone here," he said, his voice carrying across the yard to the neighbors who were still lingering. "We raised you for 18 years. We fed you, clothed you, and gave you every opportunity to become a productive member of society. You've proven you don't have what it takes." Patricia nodded solemnly. "We're not heartless people, but we can't enable weakness anymore. Maybe being on your own will toughen you up." Harold pulled out a fresh set of house keys and made a show of trying them in the front door lock. "New locks effective immediately. This house is for people who contribute." I stood on their driveway holding my suitcase, my chest still aching from whatever had happened during that concrete block test. The neighbors began dispersing, most of them avoiding eye contact with me. Mrs. Anderson paused and looked like she might say something, but her husband took her arm and guided her back toward their house. "Good luck," Patricia called out as I walked toward the street. "Maybe this will finally motivate you to become something more than what you are." That first night, I slept in Riverside Park, using my backpack as a pillow. Rain soaked through my thin spring jacket around 2 in the morning, and I spent the rest of the night shivering under a picnic pavilion, listening to the sound of water dripping from the roof and wondering how my life had collapsed so completely in the span of one afternoon. The next 4 months taught me lessons about survival that no 18-year-old should have to learn. I discovered that sleeping in your car sounds manageable until you realize how your neck cramps after the third night, and how the police will wake you up at dawn, asking questions about what you're doing in a residential neighborhood. I found work washing dishes at Danny's Diner, a greasy spoon restaurant near the highway, where the manager Carlos was willing to pay cash under the table to avoid paperwork. The job paid $7.50 an hour, and I worked split shifts from 6 in the morning until 10 at night, with a 4-hour break in the afternoon, when the restaurant closed between lunch and dinner service. During those afternoon breaks, I'd drive to the public library and use their bathrooms to wash my face and attempt to stay presentable. I learned that truck stops have showers you can rent for $8, so every third day, I'd splurge on basic hygiene. The rest of the time, I survived on packet crackers and whatever soup Danny's let me eat during my shifts. My car became my bedroom, my closet, and my office. I kept my few possessions in the trunk and slept across the back seat with a blanket I'd bought at a thrift store for $3. I parked in different locations each night to avoid attracting attention from law enforcement or property owners. The hardest part wasn't the physical discomfort. It was the complete isolation. I had no family to call, no friends who could help, and no safety net of any kind. Every decision carried enormous weight because there was no one to catch me if I made a mistake. Then my Uncle Marcus found me. Marcus Johnson was my father's older brother. Though they'd been estranged for nearly a decade over some business disagreement I'd never fully understood. He was a quiet man in his 50s, who ran a small accounting firm and lived alone in a modest 2-story house on the other side of town. I was eating a gas station sandwich in my car outside the library when he knocked on my passenger window. I didn't recognize him at first because he'd grown a beard and gained some weight since I'd last seen him at a family gathering years earlier. "Berkeley," he said through the glass. "Is that really you?" I rolled down the window, suddenly embarrassed about my appearance. I hadn't showered in 2 days, my clothes were wrinkled from sleeping in them, and I probably smelled like the industrial dishwashing detergent from Danny's. "Uncle Marcus, how did you find me?" "I heard some things through mutual friends about what happened with your parents," he said carefully. "I've been driving around looking for you for 2 weeks. Can we talk?" I got out of my car and stood awkwardly on the sidewalk. Marcus looked me over with concern, taking in my obvious weight loss and rumpled appearance. "Have you been living in your car this whole time?" I nodded, too ashamed to elaborate. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. "Berkeley, why didn't you call me? I would have helped." "I didn't think anyone would want to get involved," I said honestly. "Dad always said you two didn't get along." Marcus shook his head. "That's between me and Harold. It has nothing to do with you. Listen, I've got a spare bedroom and no one to share my house with. You want to come stay with me for a while?" The relief that flooded through me was so intense, I almost started crying right there on the sidewalk. For the first time in months, someone was offering me basic human kindness, without expecting anything in return. "I don't have money for rent," I warned him. "I'm not asking for rent. I'm asking if you want a place to sleep that isn't the back seat of a Honda Civic." I moved into Marcus's house that same evening. He showed me to a clean bedroom with an actual bed dresser and window overlooking his small backyard garden. The room had its own bathroom with a shower that produced endless hot water. "Take your time getting settled," Marcus said. "We'll figure out the details as we go." That night, I took the longest, hottest shower of my life and slept for 12 straight hours on clean sheets. I woke up convinced I'd dreamed the entire rescue, but Marcus was downstairs making coffee and scrambled eggs. "You work at that diner?" he asked over breakfast. "Yes, sir. Danny's out on Highway 12. Carlos still running that place." "You know Carlos." Marcus smiled. "I do his books. Small world. Listen, I've got some part-time work at my office if you're interested. Filing data entry, basic computer stuff. Pays better than washing dishes, and you'd learn some useful skills." I started working at Marcus Johnson Accounting the following Monday. The office was small, but professionally run, with Marcus handling books for local small businesses, individual tax returns, and basic financial consulting. He taught me to organize client files, enter data into spreadsheets, and gradually handle more complex tasks as my skills improved. But just as my life was starting to stabilize, I discovered that my parents had been systematically destroying my reputation with our extended family. It started when Marcus invited me to his neighbor's barbecue, where I ran into my cousin Tyler, Harold's nephew, from his sister's side of the family. Tyler had always been friendly at family gatherings, but when he saw me at the barbecue, his entire demeanor changed. "Berkeley," he said coldly. "Surprised to see you here." "Hey, Tyler, how have you been?" "Better than you, apparently." He looked me up and down with disgust. "I heard about what you did to Uncle Harold and Aunt Patricia. Pretty messed up, man." I had no idea what he was talking about. "What do you mean?" "Don't play dumb. The money you stole before you disappeared. $2,000. That's serious theft." My stomach dropped. "I never stole any money." Tyler scoffed. "Right, and I suppose the drug problem is made up too." "Drug problem?" "Your parents told the whole family about your addiction issues, how they tried to get you help, but you kept using and eventually started stealing to support your habit. They said they had to kick you out for everyone's safety." The conversation continued for another few minutes, but I barely heard it. Tyler walked away convinced I was a lying drug addict and thief, and nothing I said could change his mind. Over the following weeks, I learned the full scope of my parents' lies. They told aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends that I'd developed a serious drug addiction, stolen money from their bedroom dresser, and disappeared in the middle of the night after they'd confronted me about my behavior. Every family member who'd once treated me with warmth now regarded me with suspicion and disappointment. Aunt Sarah hung up when I called to explain what had really happened. Cousin Jennifer blocked me on social media. Uncle Robert told Marcus he was disappointed that he was enabling my destructive behavior by letting me live with him. Harold and Patricia had systematically poisoned every potential support network I might have had, ensuring that even if I managed to get back on my feet, I'd remain isolated from the people who'd once cared about me. But Marcus believed my version of events, and his faith in me made all the difference. Working at Marcus's accounting firm opened up a world I'd never considered before. Numbers had always made sense to me in school, but I'd never thought of math as a career path. Under Marcus's patient guidance, I discovered I had a natural talent for spotting patterns in financial data and finding ways to save clients money. My first breakthrough came when I was organizing files for Thompson's hardware store, one of Marcus's longtime clients. Mr. Thompson had been struggling with declining profits despite steady sales, and Marcus had been trying to help him identify the problem for months. While entering inventory data into spreadsheets, I noticed that certain items were being ordered far more frequently than they were selling. When I cross-referenced purchase orders with sales records, I realized Thompson was consistently over-ordering seasonal items and then having to discount them heavily to clear inventory space. "Marcus," I said one afternoon, showing him my analysis. "Look at this pattern. Mr. Thompson ordered 200 snow shovels in October, but only sold 68 before spring. Then, he had to sell the rest at 50% off, just to make room for garden supplies." Marcus studied my spreadsheet for several minutes, his eyebrows raised with interest. "This is excellent work, Berkeley. Have you checked other seasonal items?" I'd already done that analysis. Halloween decorations, Christmas lights, summer pool supplies. Same pattern across the board. If he ordered based on previous year's actual sales, instead of distributor recommendations, he could probably increase his profit margin by 15%. Marcus scheduled a meeting with Mr. Thompson for the following week, and I was invited to present my findings. Thompson listened carefully as I walked him through the data, showing him exactly how much money he was losing to overstock situations. "This is incredible," Thompson said when I finished. "I've been letting the distributors tell me what to order, instead of looking at what actually sells. How did you figure this out?" "I just like looking for patterns," I said honestly. Thompson implemented my recommendations immediately, and within 6 months, his profits had increased by 18%. Word spread among Marcus's other clients that his new assistant had a gift for financial analysis, and several business owners specifically requested that I review their books. I enrolled in community college that fall, using financial aid to cover tuition, while continuing to work part-time for Marcus. My major was business administration with a focus on accounting, and I threw myself into my studies with the intensity of someone who'd learned how quickly everything could disappear. But my academic success was interrupted by a discovery that changed everything I thought I knew about myself. The college required all students to have a physical examination, including basic blood work and a cardiovascular screening. I'd been avoiding doctors since being kicked out because I couldn't afford medical care, so this was my first professional health assessment in over a year. Dr. Angela Hoffman was a middle-aged cardiologist who conducted the screening at the campus health center. She hooked me up to an electrocardiogram machine and listened to my heart with her stethoscope for much longer than seemed normal. "Berkeley," she said after reviewing the EKG printout, "I'm seeing some irregularities that concern me. Have you ever been diagnosed with any heart conditions?" "No, ma'am. Is something wrong?" "I'd like to do some additional tests. Can you come back tomorrow for an echocardiogram?" The echocardiogram showed what Dr. Hoffman suspected. I had hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a genetic condition where the heart muscle becomes abnormally thick. In my case, the left ventricle wall was significantly enlarged, which explained the chest pain and irregular heartbeat I'd experienced when trying to lift those concrete blocks. This condition affects about 1 in every 500 people, Dr. Hoffman explained, as she showed me the ultrasound images of my heart. In most cases, people can live normal lives with proper management. But strenuous physical activity can be dangerous, potentially triggering cardiac arrhythmias or even sudden cardiac death. She pointed to the thick muscle wall visible on the screen. When you were doing that heavy lifting, your body was protecting you. The chest pain and weakness you experienced were warning signs that could have saved your life. The irony hit me like a physical blow. My parents had called me weak and pathetic for being unable to move concrete blocks, but my body had actually been protecting me from a potentially fatal cardiac episode. Their demands weren't just cruel, they were unknowingly life-threatening. "Is this hereditary?" I asked. "Yes, it's genetic, usually passed down from parents." "Has anyone in your family been diagnosed with heart problems?" I thought about Harold, who prided himself on his physical strength and had never mentioned any health issues. "Not that I know of." "You should encourage your parents and siblings to get screened. This condition can be silent until it's too late." That evening, I called my parents' house for the first time since they'd kicked me out. Patricia answered on the third ring. Berkeley. Her voice was cold, but surprised. What do you want? Mom, I need to tell you something important about my health. I found out why I had trouble with physical work. I have a heart condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's genetic, so you and Dad and Emma should get tested. There was a long pause. Is this your way of making excuses for being weak? No, Mom. This is serious. The doctor said heavy lifting could have caused me to have a heart attack. When I collapsed that day, my body was protecting me from… Berkeley, you've had 8 months to think up excuses for your failures. I'm not interested in hearing them. Can I at least talk to Dad? This affects the whole family. Harold's voice came on the line a moment later. What's this nonsense about your heart? I explained the diagnosis, again describing what Dr. Hoffman had told me about the genetic nature of the condition and the importance of family screening. So you're saying you're sick? Harold asked. I'm saying I have a condition that makes heavy physical labor dangerous. It explains why I couldn't move those concrete blocks without… Berkeley, this is pathetic even for you. You've had months to come up with a story, and this is the best you can do. Blaming your weakness on some made-up heart problem. It's not made up, Dad. I have medical records. The doctor said. Harold's voice turned harsh. The doctor said whatever you paid him to say. Real men don't need excuses for being weak. Real men don't call home 8 months later with sob stories about imaginary diseases. He hung up before I could respond. I sat in Marcus's kitchen, holding the phone, staring at the medical paperwork Dr. Hoffman had given me. Even when presented with scientific evidence that their treatment of me had been not just cruel, but potentially lethal, my parents refused to acknowledge any possibility that they might have been wrong. That night, I made a decision that would shape the rest of my life. I was done seeking approval or understanding from Harold and Patricia Johnson. They'd made their choice about what kind of people they wanted to be, and I was going to make mine. I was going to build something they could never take away from me. 2 years passed in what felt like a blur of academic achievement and professional growth. I graduated from community college with a 4.0 grade point average and transferred to the State University to complete my bachelor's degree in accounting. Marcus had promoted me to assistant manager at his firm, and I was handling increasingly complex client accounts with confidence. Marcus had become more than just my uncle. He was the father figure I'd never had. He taught me about investing, helped me open my first bank account, and shared stories about his life that helped me understand the kind of man I wanted to become. He was quiet, but principled, generous, but not foolish, and he treated everyone with a respect that my father had never shown. On a Tuesday morning in March, everything changed. I arrived at the office to find Marcus slumped over his desk unconscious. I called 911 immediately, but by the time the paramedics arrived, he'd already suffered massive brain damage from what doctors later confirmed was a severe stroke. He died 3 hours later at Mercy General Hospital, never regaining consciousness. The grief hit me harder than I'd expected. Marcus had been my anchor, my proof that family could mean something positive, and my guide into adulthood. Losing him felt like losing a parent all over again, except this time, I was mourning someone who'd actually loved me. His funeral service was held at St. Matthew's Episcopal Church, and I was surprised by how many people attended. Clients, neighbors, fellow business owners, and community members filled the pews to capacity. During the eulogy, person after person spoke about Marcus's kindness, his integrity, and his quiet generosity. Mrs. Patterson, who owned the flower shop next to his office, stood up and said, Marcus never talked about his personal life much, but he was always proud when he mentioned his nephew Berkeley. He said you were the brightest young man he'd ever worked with, and that you were going to do amazing things with your life. After the service, Marcus's attorney, Janet Walsh, approached me with a serious expression. Berkeley, I need to schedule a time to discuss Marcus's will with you. Are you available tomorrow afternoon? Yes, ma'am. Is there anything I need to bring? Just yourself. Marcus left very detailed instructions. I spent that evening in Marcus's house, which suddenly felt enormous and empty without his presence. I walked through rooms filled with his books, his furniture, his photographs, and tried to imagine what my life would look like without the man who'd saved me from homelessness and taught me to believe in myself. The following afternoon, I sat in Janet Walsh's law office while she opened a thick folder containing Marcus's final wishes. Berkeley. She began. Marcus Johnson was a very careful man when it came to financial planning. What I'm about to tell you may come as a shock. She handed me a document titled Last Will and Testament of Marcus William Johnson. Marcus has left you everything. His house, his business, his investment accounts, and his real estate holdings. The total value of the estate is approximately $1.2 million. I stared at the paper, certain I'd misheard her. I'm sorry, how much? $1.2 million. Marcus was quite successful in real estate investment over the years, though he lived modestly and didn't discuss his wealth publicly. Janet explained that Marcus had been quietly purchasing rental properties throughout the county for over 20 years. He owned 4 apartment buildings, 3 commercial properties, and several single-family homes that generated substantial monthly rental income. He also left you a personal letter, she said, handing me a sealed envelope with my name, written in Marcus's careful handwriting. I opened the letter with trembling hands. Dear Berkeley, it read, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you're probably feeling overwhelmed by what Janet has just told you. Let me explain. I've been building this wealth for one specific purpose, to ensure that you never have to depend on anyone else for your security. I watched what your parents did to you, and I decided that no matter what happened to me, you would have the resources to build whatever life you chose. I've been monitoring your parents' financial situation through industry connections. Harold and Patricia are drowning in debt from poor investment decisions and gambling debts. They're facing foreclosure within the next 6 months, and their credit is destroyed. I wanted you to know this, not so you could gloat, but so you could be prepared for what might happen when they discover your changed circumstances. The house you've been living in is now yours. It's worth about $400,000 and is completely paid off. The rental properties will provide you with steady income for the rest of your life, if you manage them wisely. I've included detailed records of all tenants' lease agreements and maintenance schedules. Most importantly, I want you to remember that wealth is a tool, not a goal. Use these resources to build the life you want, to help people who deserve help, and to never let anyone make you feel powerless again. I'm proud of the man you've become, Berkeley. Your parents threw away the best son they could have asked for, but their loss has been my gain. Take care of yourself, and remember that you deserve every good thing that comes your way. With love and respect, Uncle Marcus. I sat in Janet's office for 20 minutes after reading the letter, trying to process the magnitude of what had just happened. In one afternoon, I'd gone from being a college student with a part-time job to being a millionaire property owner. Janet walked me through the practical details of inheriting the estate, including tax implications, property management responsibilities, and investment strategies. She recommended a financial advisor and provided contact information for the property management company that handled day-to-day operations of the rental units. That evening, I walked through Marcus's house, my house, with new eyes. The Victorian architecture, hardwood floors, and stained glass windows suddenly felt different when I realized I owned them. The backyard garden, the 2-car garage, the finished basement, all of it was mine. I was 21 years old, a college junior, and completely financially independent. But even as I tried to absorb this incredible change in my circumstances, I couldn't stop thinking about what Marcus had written regarding my parents' financial troubles. Part of me felt satisfied that their cruel treatment of me had been accompanied by their own downward spiral, but another part of me felt genuinely sad about their situation. I had no idea how prescient Marcus's warning would prove to be. 3 months after Marcus's funeral, as I was learning to manage my inherited properties and finishing my junior year at the university, my phone buzzed with an Instagram message notification. The sender was listed as Emma J. 2023. And when I opened it, my heart stopped. The profile picture showed my sister Emma, now 17, and looking much older than when I'd last seen her. She was beautiful, but thin with shadows under her eyes that reminded me uncomfortably of how I'd looked during my months of homelessness. Berkeley. I hope this reaches you. I got your Instagram from Tyler's girlfriend. I don't know if you'll even read this, but I need to talk to you. Things are really bad here, and I don't know what to do. I immediately sent back a reply. Emma, of course I'll read it. What's going on? Are you okay? Her response came within minutes, followed by several more messages that painted a picture of our parents' deteriorating household that was worse than anything Marcus had predicted. After you left, Mom and Dad turned all their criticism toward me. Nothing I do is ever good enough. Mom keeps telling me I'm not smart enough for college, and that I should just plan to work retail for the rest of my life. Dad makes me work at his construction company every day after school, without paying me anything. And if I complain, he says I should be grateful for the character building. The messages continued with details that made my stomach churn. Emma described coming home from her part-time job at the grocery store to find Harold screaming at Patricia about gambling debts, credit card bills, and missed mortgage payments. She'd overheard phone conversations where creditors threatened legal action. The house is falling apart, she wrote. The roof leaks in 3 places, and Dad says we can't afford to fix it. Mom has been eating nothing but instant ramen for weeks because she says we need to save money for more important things. But then Dad comes home with lottery tickets and scratch-offs every day. She sent photos that broke my heart. The living room I remembered from my childhood was now cluttered with stacks of overdue bills, collection notices, and legal documents. Water stains covered the ceiling where the roof had been leaking. The kitchen sink was full of dishes because the hot water heater had broken and couldn't be repaired. There's more, Emma continued. Last week, a man came to the door with foreclosure papers. Mom started crying, and Dad started yelling at her, saying it was her fault for spending too much on groceries. Berkeley, they're going to lose the house in 60 days. But the worst part was what Emma revealed about how our parents were treating her. They blame me for everything now. When bills come in the mail, Dad says it's because I cost too much to feed. When Mom gets upset about money, she tells me I should drop out of high school and get a full-time job to contribute to the family finances. They've started timing my showers and telling me I can only shower every other day to save on the water bill. Emma was 17, a senior in high school with a 3.7 grade point average, and she was being treated like a burden rather than a daughter. She'd been working 20 hours a week at the grocery store and saving every penny she earned in a secret bank account, planning to leave home the day she turned 18. I'm so sorry I didn't defend you when they kicked you out, she wrote. I was scared, and I didn't understand how wrong they were. I should have stood up for you, and I hate myself for being such a coward. I called her immediately. Emma, it's Berkeley. Are you somewhere you can talk? Oh my God, you actually called. Her voice was shaky with emotion. I'm in my car outside the grocery store. I just finished my shift. Emma, you don't need to apologize for anything. You were 16 and dependent on them. There was nothing you could have done. But I could have said something. I could have told the neighbors the truth about what was happening. And they would have punished you for it. You did the smart thing by keeping yourself safe. We talked for over an hour. Emma described in detail how our parents' financial problems had made them increasingly desperate and cruel. Harold had started drinking more heavily, and Patricia had developed what sounded like depression, staying in bed most days, and only emerging to criticize Emma about various imagined failures. The weird thing is, they keep talking about you, Emma said. Not in a good way, but they're obsessed with finding out what happened to you. Dad drives by places where he thinks you might work, and Mom has been calling Marcus's old clients, asking if they know how to contact you. This surprised me. Why would they want to contact me? I think they heard rumors that Marcus left you something in his will. Mom was talking on the phone with Aunt Linda last week, and I heard her say something about family money that should be shared equally among blood relatives. The picture became clearer. My parents weren't interested in rebuilding a relationship with me. They were interested in accessing whatever inheritance I might have received from Marcus. Their sudden curiosity about my whereabouts coincided perfectly with their foreclosure timeline. "Emma," I said carefully, "how serious is their financial situation?" "Really serious. I saw Dad filling out bankruptcy paperwork last week, but then he threw it away and bought $50 worth of lottery tickets instead. Mom keeps saying they just need one lucky break to fix everything." I made a decision that would change both our lives. "Emma, I want you to know that you have options. When you turn 18, you don't have to stay in that house. You can come live with me, and I'll help you get into college." "Berkeley, that's so generous, but I can't ask you to do that. I don't even know what your situation is." "My situation is that I inherited Marcus's house and some other things. I can afford to help you, and I want to." Emma was quiet for a long moment. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. You shouldn't have to live like that for one more day than necessary." "But what about Mom and Dad, if they find out I'm planning to leave?" "They don't need to find out until you're ready. Keep saving your money, keep your grades up, and let me know when you want to make the transition. I'll help you with everything." That conversation marked the beginning of a secret relationship between Emma and me, as we planned her escape from our toxic family home. But it also marked the beginning of something else. My parents' increasingly desperate attempts to track me down as their financial situation deteriorated. 2 weeks later, Emma sent me another series of messages that confirmed my worst fears about Harold and Patricia's intentions. "They know," she wrote. "They found out about your inheritance somehow, and now they're planning to come find you. Mom keeps saying you owe the family support, because family takes care of family. Dad has been driving around town looking for Marcus's house, and I think he found it. Berkeley, they're not coming to apologize. They're coming because they think you have money they deserve." The call came on a Thursday evening in late September, just as I was finishing dinner at my kitchen table. I'd been expecting it ever since Emma's warning, but I was still surprised by the tone of voice on the other end of the line. "Berkeley, honey, it's Mom." Patricia's voice was sickeningly sweet, using a maternal tone I'd never heard from her in my entire life. She sounded like she was talking to a beloved child, rather than the son she'd thrown out for being too weak. "Mom," I said cautiously. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so glad you answered. I've been thinking about you so much lately. We both have. Your father and I have been doing a lot of soul-searching about what happened when you were 18, and we realize we made some mistakes." I almost laughed at the word mistakes. Orchestrating a public humiliation and throwing me out on the street wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate cruelty. "What kind of mistakes?" I asked. "We were too hard on you, honey. We expected too much too fast. We didn't understand that you were dealing with health issues that made physical work difficult for you." This was interesting. Someone had told them about my heart condition. "How did you find out about my heart condition?" "Oh, word gets around in a small town. The important thing is that we know now, and we feel terrible about how we treated you. We should have been more supportive." Patricia's voice had the rehearsed quality of someone who'd practiced this conversation multiple times. Every word was calculated to sound caring, while avoiding any direct admission of wrongdoing. "Your father wants to talk to you too," she continued. "Harold, come here. Berkeley's on the phone." There was some muffled conversation, and then Harold's voice came on the line. His tone was equally artificial, trying to project warmth and paternal concern. "Berkeley, son, how are you doing?" "I'm doing fine, Dad." "Good, good. Listen, your mother and I have been talking, and we want you to know how proud we are of what you've accomplished. We heard you graduated from college, and that you're doing well for yourself." They'd definitely been gathering information about my life, probably through the extended family members they'd previously turned against me. "We've learned from our mistakes," Harold continued. "We were young parents and we didn't always handle things the right way. But family is family, and we love you no matter what." The conversation continued in this vein for several more minutes, with both parents taking turns expressing regret for their misunderstanding and emphasizing how much they missed having me in their lives. But I noticed they never used the words sorry or apologize. Everything was framed as a mutual misunderstanding, rather than their deliberate cruelty. Finally, Patricia got to the real point of their call. "Berkeley, honey, we'd love to see you. Maybe we could come over to your place this weekend. We could bring dinner and just spend some time together as a family." "Actually," I said, "before we talk about visits, I'm curious about something. How did you get my phone number?" There was a brief pause. "Emma gave it to us," Harold said. "She's been in touch with you, hasn't she?" I knew this was a lie. Emma and I had been extremely careful about our communications, and she would never have given them my contact information without warning me first. "That's interesting," I said. "What else has Emma told you about my situation?" "Just that you're doing well," Patricia said quickly. "And that you inherited something from Marcus. We're so happy for you, sweetheart. Marcus was a good man, and you deserve to be remembered in his will." Now we were getting to the truth. They knew about the inheritance, and this sudden interest in reconciliation was directly connected to their financial desperation. "How much do you know about what Marcus left me?" I asked directly. Harold's voice became slightly more aggressive. "We know he left you some property. Look, Berkeley, we're not calling to ask for anything. We just want our family back together. But you are facing some financial difficulties, aren't you?" There was another pause longer this time. "Everyone has challenges," Patricia said defensively. "But that's not why we're calling." "What kind of challenges?" Harold's artificial warmth was starting to slip. "Berkeley, why are you asking these questions? We're trying to reconnect with you, and you're interrogating us like we're criminals." "I'm just trying to understand the situation. Are you about to lose your house?" The silence that followed was telling. Patricia finally spoke, and her voice had lost some of its sweetness. "We've had some setbacks, but we're handling them. Every family goes through difficult times." "What kind of setbacks?" "Berkeley." Harold interrupted, his tone now openly hostile. "I don't like your attitude. We're reaching out to our son after 2 years, trying to rebuild our relationship, and you're acting like we have ulterior motives." "Do you have ulterior motives?" "Of course not. We love you. We want you back in our lives. And my inheritance has nothing to do with this timing." Harold's voice exploded with anger. "You know what, Berkeley? Maybe you haven't changed as much as we hoped. You're still the same selfish, suspicious kid you always were. We're trying to be the bigger people here, trying to forgive and forget. And you're throwing accusations around." The mask was slipping rapidly. "Forgive me for what I asked. For being difficult. For making everything about yourself. For turning Marcus against his own family." "How did I turn Marcus against his family? He never had a problem with us until you filled his head with lies about how we treated you. You poisoned that relationship just like you're trying to poison this conversation." Patricia jumped back in, trying to salvage the situation. "Harold, calm down. Berkeley, honey, your father is just frustrated because we miss you so much. We've made mistakes, and we want to make things right." "What specifically do you want to make right?" I asked. "We want to be a family again," she said. "We want to support each other through good times and bad times. That's what families do." "Support each other how?" "Emotionally, of course. And if someone in the family has been blessed with good fortune, maybe they can help out family members who are struggling." There it was, the real reason for their call. "Are you asking me for money?" I said directly. "We're asking for you to consider helping your family if you're in a position to do so," Harold said. "That's what Marcus would have wanted. Family, taking care of family." "How do you know what Marcus would have wanted?" "Because he was a Johnson, and Johnsons stick together." The irony was staggering. Harold had been estranged from Marcus for years, had bad-mouthed him at family gatherings, and had never shown any interest in sticking together until he needed money. "What specifically are you asking for?" I said. Patricia's voice became pleading. "We're behind on our mortgage, honey. Just enough to catch up on payments so we don't lose our house. Maybe $25,000. It would be a loan, of course. We'd pay you back as soon as we get back on our feet." $25,000 to people who'd called me worthless and thrown me out on the street. People who'd spread lies about me to destroy my relationships with extended family. People who were now emotionally abusing Emma the same way they'd abused me. "I'll need some time to think about it," I said. "How much time?" Harold asked immediately. "I don't know. This is a big decision." Harold's voice turned threatening. "Berkeley family emergencies don't wait for convenient timing. We could lose our house in 30 days. Then maybe you should have called sooner." "We didn't know about your inheritance sooner. Look, son, I'm going to be straight with you. Marcus manipulated you. He turned you against your real family, and then he used his money to make you think he was some kind of hero. But at the end of the day, we're your parents. We're your blood. And blood means something." "What does blood mean exactly?" "It means you have an obligation. It means you don't let your parents become homeless when you're sitting on a fortune you didn't earn." Patricia tried to soften Harold's approach. "What your father means is that we hope you'll consider helping us because you love us, and because we love you." "If you love me," I said, "why did you tell the entire extended family that I was a drug addict and a thief?" Another long pause. "We were hurt and angry," Patricia admitted. "We said things we shouldn't have said. You said I stole $2,000 from your bedroom. We thought you might have taken some money. You told everyone I was addicted to drugs. We were trying to make sense of why you left. You told them I disappeared in the middle of the night instead of admitting you threw me out." Harold's voice turned cold. "Berkeley, we can rehash the past all night, or we can focus on the future. The question is simple. Are you going to help your family or not? I told you I need time to think about it." "How much time?" "I don't know." "1 week." "I don't know." Harold's voice became openly threatening. "Berkeley, let me explain something to you. Marcus took advantage of a young man with developmental disabilities to turn him against his own family. That inheritance should have been shared with his surviving relatives, not given entirely to someone who was manipulated into believing lies about his parents. Are you threatening to contest the will? I'm pointing out that any reasonable person would question whether someone with your medical condition was competent to make major financial decisions." I felt a chill run down my spine. He was referencing my heart condition, twisting it into some kind of mental disability that could be used to challenge Marcus's will in court. My heart condition doesn't affect my mental capacity. That's your opinion. A judge might see things differently, especially if he heard testimony about how Marcus isolated you from your family and filled your head with lies about people who love you. Patricia tried to soften the threat. "Berkeley, honey, we don't want to go to court. We just want to rebuild our family relationship, and we hope you'll consider helping us through this difficult time." The conversation continued for another few minutes, but the essential dynamic had been established. My parents viewed my inheritance as something they deserved access to, and they were prepared to use legal threats, emotional manipulation, and outright lies to get it. When I finally hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time thinking about everything that had just happened. Harold and Patricia hadn't changed at all. They were the same cruel, manipulative people who'd thrown me out 2 years earlier. The only difference was that now they needed something from me, so they were temporarily pretending to be loving parents. But their pretense had cracked almost immediately, under questioning revealing the same selfishness, dishonesty, and sense of entitlement that had always defined their relationship with me. I called Emma immediately. "They didn't get my phone number from you, did they?" "Absolutely not," she said. "I would never give them your information without asking you first. How did they get it?" "I don't know. But they called and they want money." "How much money?" $25,000 to catch up on their mortgage payments. Emma was quiet for a moment. "Berkeley, They didn't just ask for $25,000. Yesterday, I overheard Dad talking to someone on the phone about your inheritance. He said you got over $1 million, and that he was going to get his fair share one way or another. My worst fears were confirmed. Harold and Patricia weren't just looking for emergency assistance. They viewed my entire inheritance as something they had a right to claim. Emma, how quickly can you be ready to leave that house? I graduate in December. I've been planning to leave right after graduation. What if we moved that timeline up? What if you left sooner? Berkeley, I only have 2 more months of high school. I don't want to drop out. You wouldn't have to drop out. There are options. Online programs transferring credits, taking your GED early. The important thing is getting you out of that house before things get worse. Do you really think they'll get worse? Emma, they're desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. I don't want you caught in the middle of whatever they're planning. We talked for another hour about practical options for accelerating Emma's departure from our parents' house. I could provide her with housing, financial support for her education, and help with the legal paperwork needed to establish her independence as soon as she turned 18. But even as we planned Emma's escape, I knew that my confrontation with Harold and Patricia was far from over. They'd revealed their true intentions during that phone call, and they'd made legal threats that I couldn't ignore. I was about to learn just how far desperate parents would go to claim money they believed belonged to them. I'm standing here in my driveway looking at Harold and Patricia through my living room window as they pound on my front door. They've been out there for 20 minutes, alternating between banging and shouting and pressing their faces against the glass to peer inside. Their car is parked haphazardly across my lawn, and I can see collection notices and legal papers scattered across their dashboard. This is the moment I've been preparing for since that threatening phone call 3 weeks ago. After our conversation where Harold implied he might contest Marcus's will by claiming I was mentally incompetent, I'd taken several strategic steps to protect myself and expose their true motivations. I'd hired an attorney who specialized in estate law, documented all my interactions with Harold and Patricia, and most importantly, I'd started recording their phone calls after consulting with my lawyer about state recording laws. The recordings I'd collected over the past few weeks painted a clear picture of people who viewed me as a financial resource rather than a son. In one call, Patricia had said, "Berkeley, honey, we know you have over $1 million. Sharing just half of that with your parents wouldn't hurt you, but it would save our lives." In another, Harold had become openly hostile. "That money should have been split among Marcus's family members. You manipulated a sick old man into giving you everything, and now you're being selfish with money that isn't rightfully yours." But the most damaging recording had happened just yesterday when Harold had made explicit legal threats. "Berkeley, we're going to court, whether you like it or not. We'll testify that Marcus took advantage of your heart condition to turn you against your family, and we'll demand that the inheritance be redistributed fairly among his blood relatives." Those recordings were currently in the possession of my attorney, my financial advisor, and several key members of our extended family. Emma had moved into my guest bedroom 2 weeks earlier after I'd helped her arrange to complete her high school graduation requirements through an accelerated online program. She was currently at the community college taking placement tests for early enrollment in spring classes, safely away from the confrontation I'd known was coming. I picked up my phone and made the call I'd been planning for weeks. "Uncle Robert, it's Berkeley. I need you, Aunt Linda, and Tyler to listen to something important." "Berkeley, what's going on?" "I'm going to play you some voicemails that Harold and Patricia have left me over the past month. I think you need to hear what they actually sound like when they think no one else is listening." I played the recordings for my extended family members, starting with Patricia's sweet, manipulative attempts to claim they'd made mistakes, and ending with Harold's threats to contest the will by claiming I was mentally incompetent. The silence that followed was deafening. "Jesus Christ," Uncle Robert finally said. "Berkeley, I owe you a massive apology. We had no idea they were lying about what happened when you were 18. They told us you stole money and had drug problems. Aunt Linda added, her voice shaking with anger. We believed them because we never imagined parents would lie about their own child like that. Tyler's voice was full of shame. Berkeley, I'm so sorry for how I treated you at that barbecue. I should have listened to your side of the story. It's okay, I said honestly. You believed what you were told by people you trusted. But I wanted you to hear this before they try to approach any of you for support or character references. They already have, Uncle Robert said grimly. Harold called me last week, asking if I'd testify in court that Marcus was senile and that you'd isolated him from his family. I told him I wouldn't get involved, but now I understand what he was really asking. We talked for another 30 minutes with various family members expressing outrage about Harold and Patricia's lies and manipulation. By the end of the call, I had a united extended family who understood the truth about my parents' character and motivations. Now, watching them desperately bang on my door, I made my final decision. I walked outside and stood on my front porch, looking down at two people who appeared to have aged 10 years in the past month. Harold's hair was completely gray, and his clothes looked like he'd been sleeping in them. Patricia was thin to the point of appearing sick, and her eyes had the desperate look of someone who'd run out of options. Berkeley, Patricia said immediately, her voice cracking with emotion. Thank God. We've been trying to reach you for weeks. Why haven't you been returning our calls? Because I've been thinking about what you said, I replied calmly. And Harold demanded, We're 48 hours away from losing our house. We need an answer. I looked at both of them for a long moment. These people who'd thrown me out for being too weak, who'd spread lies about me to destroy my relationships, who'd emotionally abused Emma, and who now stood on my porch demanding money they felt entitled to. I have an answer, I said. But first I want you to meet someone. Emma stepped out from behind the front door, where she'd been listening to the conversation. Harold and Patricia's faces went through a series of expressions, surprise, confusion, and then anger. Emma, Patricia said sharply, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be at school. I moved out, Mom. Berkeley is helping me finish high school and start college early. Harold's face turned red with rage. Berkeley, you turned our daughter against us. You kidnapped her. She's 17 years old and made her own choice about where to live, I said calmly. Just like I made my own choice when you threw me out. We didn't throw you out, Patricia protested. We tried to motivate you to become independent. I pulled out my phone and played one of their recorded voicemails on speaker. That money should have been split among Marcus's family members. You manipulated a sick old man into giving you everything, and now you're being selfish with money that isn't rightfully yours. Harold's face went white as he heard his own voice. You recorded us, Patricia whispered. I documented our conversations after you threatened to contest Uncle Marcus's will by claiming I was mentally incompetent due to my heart condition. I played several more recordings, including Patricia's demand for just half of my inheritance and Harold's threats of legal action. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. Emma is staying here with me, and she's going to college with my full financial support. You two have one opportunity for any kind of relationship with your children. What do you mean? Patricia asked. Family therapy, professional counseling to address your abusive behavior toward both Emma and me. You'll attend sessions for 6 months, and you'll demonstrate genuine change in how you treat people. Harold started to interrupt, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished. You'll also publicly apologize to our extended family for the lies you told about me. You'll admit that I never stole money, never had drug problems, and that you threw me out for being unable to do heavy labor that could have killed me due to my heart condition. And if we do all that, Patricia asked, then we can start rebuilding a relationship based on honesty and respect. And I'll help you avoid foreclosure with a structured loan that has clear repayment terms and boundaries. Harold's pride flared up. We're not going to grovel for money from our own son. Then you'll lose your house, I said simply. Those are your options: personal growth and accountability, or continued pride and homelessness. Patricia started crying. Berkeley, we're your parents. We made mistakes, but we love you. If you love me, you'll do the work to become people worth loving back. The conversation continued for another hour on my front porch, with Harold initially refusing my terms and Patricia gradually accepting that they had no other options. Their financial situation was worse than I'd even imagined. They owed money to creditors, family members, and even loan sharks who'd been calling their house with threats. Emma spoke up during a pause in the conversation. Mom, Dad, Berkeley is offering you a chance to be better people. The therapy isn't punishment, it's help. Patricia looked at her daughter with surprise. Emma, sweetie, you don't understand how complicated adult relationships are. I understand that you've been treating me the same way you treated Berkeley, Emma said firmly. Telling me I'm not smart enough for college, making me work without pay, blaming me for bills I didn't create. I understand that perfectly. That comment seemed to hit Patricia harder than anything else we'd said. For the first time, she appeared to truly consider the possibility that their behavior had been wrong, rather than just misunderstood. Harold tried one more manipulation tactic. Berkeley families shouldn't need contracts and conditions to help each other. Real families just help because they love each other. Real families. I replied, don't throw their children out on the street for being unable to do manual labor that could have killed them. Real families don't spread lies to destroy their children's relationships. Real families don't emotionally abuse their daughters and then demand money from their sons. Harold opened his mouth to argue, but Patricia put her hand on his arm. Harold, stop. Just stop. She looked at me with tears streaming down her face. Berkeley, you're right. We've been terrible parents. I don't even know how we became these people, but you're right. She turned to Emma. Baby, I'm so sorry for everything I said about college. You're brilliant, and you deserve every opportunity in the world. Harold remained silent, his jaw clenched with stubborn pride. Harold, Patricia said, our son is offering to save our house and give us a chance to have our children back. What is your pride worth compared to that? The silence stretched for several minutes, while Harold wrestled with his ego. Finally, he spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. What kind of therapy? 6 months later, I'm hosting Christmas dinner in my dining room for the first time since inheriting Marcus's house. Emma is seated across from me, radiant with confidence and excitement about starting her second semester of college in January. Her grades have been excellent, and she's declared a major in social work with a focus on family counseling. Harold and Patricia are seated at the far end of the table, looking healthier and more relaxed than I've seen them in years. The family therapy process has been difficult for all of us, but Dr. Rebecca Martinez has helped us navigate conversations that needed to happen for decades. Harold has been the most resistant to change, but even he has made significant progress. He's admitted that his treatment of both Emma and me was abusive, stemming from his own childhood trauma and his fear of appearing weak. He's learned to recognize his triggers for verbal attacks and has developed strategies for managing his anger without targeting his children. Patricia has made even more dramatic improvements. She's addressed underlying depression that had been affecting her judgment for years, and she's learned to communicate affection without manipulation. For the first time in my life, I've heard her give genuine compliments without expecting anything in return. They've both found stable employment. Harold working for a construction company as a supervisor, rather than trying to run his own failing business, and Patricia managing the office for a local dental practice. They're paying back their structured loan from me on schedule, and they've rebuilt their credit enough to refinance their mortgage at manageable terms. But the most important change has been in how we relate to each other. Berkeley, Harold says as we're clearing dinner dishes. I want to say something I should have said months ago. I'm proud of you. Not just for your success, but for the kind of man you've become despite how we treated you. I'm proud of the work you've done too, Dad. Change isn't easy, especially when you're starting later in life. Patricia hugs Emma tightly as she prepares to leave for her part-time job at the campus library. I love you, sweetheart. Study hard, but not too hard. Make sure you're having some fun too. I will, Mom. Love you too. As my family prepares to leave, Patricia pauses at the front door. Berkeley, there's something I need you to know. That inheritance from Marcus. You deserved every penny of it. He saw your character when we were too blind to see it ourselves. Don't ever let anyone tell you that you didn't earn what you have. After they leave, Emma and I sit in the living room reflecting on how much our lives have changed over the past year. Do you think they'll keep improving? Emma asks. I think they're committed to being better people, I say honestly. But even if they backslide, we've learned that we can be okay without their approval. That's the most important lesson of all. Marcus would be proud of how this turned out, Emma says. I think he would be. He taught me that wealth is a tool for building the life you want and helping people who deserve help. We've done both. Emma is starting her sophomore year in the fall with a double major in social work and business administration. She wants to help other young people escape abusive family situations while also learning to manage the trust fund I've established for her education and future. Harold and Patricia have become advocates for family therapy in their church and community, sharing their story with other parents who struggle with anger and control issues. Their willingness to admit their failures publicly has helped several other families seek professional help before reaching crisis points. As for me, I've completed my bachelor's degree in accounting and taken over full management of Marcus's real estate portfolio. The properties generate enough income to support my family's needs, while also funding scholarship programs for young people aging out of foster care or escaping family homelessness. I still live in Marcus's Victorian house, but it's no longer just my house. It's become a gathering place for holidays, celebrations, and family meetings. The guest rooms are frequently occupied by Emma's friends from college, extended family members visiting from out of town, and occasionally young adults who need temporary housing while getting back on their feet. The dining room table where we just shared Christmas dinner has hosted homework sessions, family therapy meetings, birthday parties, and countless conversations about forgiveness, accountability, and what it means to love people while still maintaining healthy boundaries. I've learned that justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about creating opportunities for people to become better versions of themselves. Harold and Patricia could have chosen pride over growth, stubbornness over accountability. The fact that they chose differently doesn't erase the harm they caused, but it does create possibilities for healing that I never thought were possible. Emma has taught me that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting, and that loving someone doesn't mean accepting unacceptable behavior. Our relationship with our parents is built on honesty now, rather than fear, respect, rather than obligation. Most importantly, I've learned that the family you build is just as important as the family you're born into. Marcus showed me what unconditional support looked like. Emma showed me what loyalty and courage looked like. Dr. Martinez showed me what accountability and growth looked like. Together, they taught me that it's possible to break cycles of cruelty and build something better. Standing in my inherited house, surrounded by evidence of lives rebuilt and relationships healed, I know that Marcus would be proud of the choices I've made with the resources he provided. His gift wasn't just financial security. It was the freedom to define family on my own terms, and the power to demand that the people who claim to love me actually demonstrate that love through their actions. That's the deepest lesson of this entire journey. Real love requires real change, and real change requires real accountability. Without those foundations, family is just a word people use to justify treating each other badly. With those foundations, family becomes something powerful enough to overcome almost any obstacle. Have you ever had to choose between accepting toxic behavior from family members or demanding they change before you'd allow them back into your life? How did you handle setting boundaries with people who expected unconditional forgiveness without accountability? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family challenges and building healthier relationships. And if you know someone who's struggling with similar family dynamics, please share this story with them. Sometimes, knowing that others have walked this difficult path can make all the difference in finding the courage to demand better treatment from the people who claim to love us. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you remember that you deserve to be treated with respect and kindness, especially by the people closest to you. Take care of yourselves, and remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's worst behavior until they're ready to do the work of becoming better.